All right, and up next, as part of our next panel conversation on reimagining the future of data visualization, we'll be having 3 short lightning talks from our 3 panelists, and then inviting our panelists and Gabby Marit, who just gave her wonderful talk before the break, up to the stage for a conversation about the future of data visualization. Our first speaker on the panel is Gabrielle Rossi, presenting the end of data viz as we know it, rethinking our role in a data-saturated world. Gabrielle was a co-founder of Accurate in 2011 in Milan and leads its US operations. Since the firm's founding, he has managed information design and data-native innovation projects for clients including IBM, Google, Gates Foundation, Starbucks, United Nations, and MoMA. He has previously co-founded and exited an experiential design agency and has taught at the Politecnico, a place in Milano that is wonderful, I'm sure, and he will tell us about, and NABA, and lectured at Parsons, Columbia, SVA, and UPenn, among others. Gabrielle holds an MS in design from the same university and studied in the electronic visualization lab at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Welcome to the stage, Gabrielle.
I will use, hello. Let me plug it here. Hello. Okay, so I come to you with a very uplifting talk, as you can see from the title, where I want to discuss why I think our profession is slowly dying, but it's ultimately an optimistic talk. So I'm, as Amanda introduced, I'm Gabriele. I co-founded Accurate. It's a firm that started 15 years ago, mostly as a data visualization studio, but that has, over the years, evolved into what is now, I'd say, a design and strategy firm. And the title is clearly a provocation, so bear with me for these 10 minutes. And also, you will excuse me if I follow my notes, because I'm used to ramble, especially because English is not my first language, and it has a relevance with the talk. But I tend to take a lot of time explaining concepts using my hands because I'm Italian. And so I'll follow my notes closely to try to stay within the 10 minutes. Recently, I've been asking myself more and more, what if the growing popularity of data viz means our roles could be disappearing? And I'm not talking necessarily about AI and the disruption that it might bring, of course, but more in general about democratization of data viz. Because we often equate popularity with permanence, but in some creative and technical disciplines, that's not always true, at least what I think. Sometimes I think when the more widespread a skill becomes, the more it becomes invisible. And I'm not saying that the world doesn't need data viz, because we've all seen there's a growing demand for what we do: charts, dashboards, visual storytelling. The thing is that not all of these projects really require someone really expert to work on them. They don't necessarily require a specialist. And this is because, of course, what we've been hearing on and on for these past 3 days, tools are more intuitive, AI, people are learning what it means to do data visualization, but even more, it's becoming second nature for many professionals. Now it's expected of people to use data visualization somehow, and so they just do it. And this means our role might be evolving. And the best parallel I can make relates to what my late mom was doing. She was an English grammar and literature teacher in a school that trained specifically people that would work in companies to be translators and business admins. So she would teach them how, in her case, about like English culture and literature and grammar, but the school was training them to become the people that would take a message, adapt it culturally, translate it, then type it on a typewriter and send the letter. Because of course, at the time, if you wanted to do business internationally, you needed someone that would do this for English, for French, for German. It was the only way, as an Italian company in that case, to do business internationally. But now people just learn a little bit of English, they write their own emails, and it's absolutely not as good as it was when you had people that were focusing only on that aspect, that were very good at translating, also adapting your message culturally to a different audience. But we just do it. Like, no one now thinks about paying someone to translate everything. And they just do it. They write it in broken English, it's fine. And if it doesn't work, now you have ChatGPT. So they can correct your emails, you're done. And this talk itself is a good example. Like, of course, like, a translator would have helped me get to the point quicker, but I'm doing it, it's fine. You're gonna understand, I guess, I hope. And I think the same thing is happening in a way with data visualization, because it's not a boutique skill anymore. It's becoming some sort of an expectation for any project, any work, something everyone in business or research has to be at least a little bit conversational in. It's not perfect, but it works. So there is less interest, I think, in paying people to do just that. There is a need, but budgets are shrinking. And I saw this evolution with my own company. Let's see if there's a video. Yes. Over the past 15 years. When we started Accurate in 2010, 11, our focus was unique. We were the people that were turning data into beautiful and meaningful stories. So you know how it works. The client came to us with a data set. They wanted to tell a story. We were crunching numbers, cleaning data sets, using Illustrator, and then processing, and then JavaScript, and turn it into a visualization of their data set. And that was the product. We were selling that product, the visualization made with the content coming from the client. And they were happy to pay good money for it because they had no way to do it internally. At the time, that technical specialization and the storytelling expertise was the product, was what made our offering unique. But then clients evolved over time, and so their needs. So they started hiring people that were a little bit skilled in data visualization, and then Tableau came, Power BI, and all these things. And they slowly stopped coming to us with data sets, or actually, they would have liked an expert to do that project instead of the person that they hired. But they were not willing to pay $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 for a report or a dashboard. And so they had to work with what they had. People started learning, and that was it. But the conversation, because of this, shifted. It sort of like moved upstream. So they started asking for what they couldn't do internally. So systems, processes, experiences. They started to rely on us to tell them how to use data more strategically, how to integrate it as part of their infrastructures and processes. And this eventually led to a progressive evolution of our practice, which now mainly works with two different types of audiences. First group of clients, which are the ones that pay the most, are corporations and tech startups. And for them, we are like a hybrid between a consulting firm and a product studio. We innovate on how data is integrated within their core business functions. We develop strategies, create prototypes, new tools specifically for domain experts that need to work with data. And we prototype and launch these digital products, say, in data-heavy scenarios, but they don't necessarily always include data visualization. These are products that are used for like monetizing data or like to launch a new digital business or a new venture. We're sort of like the equivalent of a data-focused innovation team. We're better than their internal teams in situation where understanding the relationship with users and data is key. But we don't do data visualization. We do something slightly larger. So we imagined data-rich processes and products in a way that might have data visualization in them or not. And then there's a very different types of clients that see us more as an agency. It's more similar to what we were in the beginning, but they're not buying single data visualizations for us. They are looking for more complex outputs, like immersive experiences, always in data-heavy contexts, like, for example, this is an island made of recycled plastics where with projections and little caves with data holograms in them, we try to explain to a very distracted audience at a furniture fair, like the Milano Design Week, the efforts that the furniture industry and producers are undertaking to save water during production processes. It's not something that you normally would ask an advertising agency, but you need someone who can build an island out of these things and manage projections and so on. So our unique skill set here is valuable because we understand complex scenarios that involve data, because we can put it in context in a way, but most of all because we can execute across disciplines beyond data visualization. And so we had to learn to do other things. Basically, we stopped thinking of data visualization as our product, as the goal, and we started treating it as one of the ingredients in a larger multidisciplinary practice. And we didn't lose our expertise around data visualization in the process, because all of these things that I'm sharing share what we call a data native approach. And because we stopped saying that our work is data visualization, we invented this term to describe the shift that happened in our work. And we now say that we are a data native consultancy. And we like it because being a native in something implies a sort of like fluency. It elevates our relationship with the object of the research, data in this case. And it makes our work something more than simply data-driven. It's not passive, it's more active as a role. And it describes the fact that after 15 years working immersed in this, we think in data in a way, you can say. And we're doing it throughout all the phases of a project and not at the very end just to visualize a result. And it's more like a lens, an instinct, like a second language in this case. And it's not exactly what we sell, but it's how we do things. In the same way, digital natives don't use the internet, but they live in it. It's an extension of their life. There's no difference between real life and the digital world, like the physical world and the digital world. We say that a data native consultant or professional doesn't use data. They live inside data. They think in data. And for how we see it, this is a room of data native people. And I think some sort of shift is needed because I believe in 10 years, not many job listings will say data visualization expert, apply here. The baseline level of fluency in the field will be too high, and where there isn't, AI will close the gap. So I don't think it's a threat necessarily to our jobs, but I think it's a natural arc of a maturing field, and we should find a way to follow it. And because we will be faced with a choice. We can resist this shift and fight to gatekeep our knowledge, or we can embrace the change and see where it takes us. And I love this description by Carly Ayers. She's talking about AI in this case, but I love it, like when execution becomes trivial, direction becomes essential. So when execution is easy, the impact we can have moves necessarily upstream. Our value has moved from the output, I think, up to the infrastructure level, to strategy. And from producing a chart, just like Gabi was saying, to enabling an organization to work better with data holistically. We have to become, in a way, curators of context and creators of systems. And I think that's a much more scalable and impactful role for our future. I think we have to design not just the visualization itself, but environments where data thinking thrives. That means building tools, as we heard many people say during these days, like designing processes, setting standards, training teams. We can be the group of people that enables new cultures of widespread data fluency. That could be our goal. And it might feel threatening, but I think it's the natural evolution of success. Our job is not to cling to execution, but to invent a next layer of value for ourselves. Because invisibility, I think, doesn't mean irrelevance. It's a true sign we have succeeded, the fact that it spreads all over the world. And now we have to adapt to this hopefully better world that we contributed to creating with our pioneering work over the past years. And to continue with the metaphor I opened with, in a way, we all started our profession here as translators. because we were the people that were translating data into images. I think in the future, a few of us, a limited number, will become the equivalent of linguists. So the people that either will teach this new, basic, democratized, widespread skill to a new generation of professionals, or they will explore the boundaries of the discipline, pushing it further, researching, testing, experimenting. But I think that most of us will not become that. Most of us will evolve by embedding our skills elsewhere. So into product design, into policy, into education, business, branding, or architecture, you name it. The knowledge remains, but it takes on a new role at the service of something else. It blends into other domains where data thinking could potentially add value. And for a closing thought, I think we shouldn't fight to preserve our current role, but we should start designing our own obsolescence. I call it like, let's design the role that we will have in a data fluent world, which will be different from what we have, because in a way, we're celebrating a success. Like, we succeeded at making data and data viz instinctive, embedded, fluent, and that's something to celebrate. Like, the world understands what we were doing when they were not understanding us. So what we have learned won't disappear, I think. It will resurface in many different ways and somewhere else. And I think it could be the foundation of something greater. So this is the hope I want to leave you with. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that provocative starting place for our future of data visualization, our own obsolescence. Let's go ahead and move on to our next speaker, Shelley Chung. She will present a bespoke to backbone talk on evolving data viz from story to system. Here's a bit more about Shelley. She's an award-winning designer and engineer with 8 years of experience in tech and journalism. Currently, Shelley serves as a staff design engineer at Visa, where she leads the development of Visa chart components, an open... Here's some Visa and or Shelley fans in the audience. An open source accessibility focused design system for data viz, along with its related data products for Visa's global clients. Previously, she worked for the Associated Press's elections team, designing and developing interactive visualizations for 2024 US national and local elections. She holds an MS in computer science and an MS in journalism from Columbia University. Shelley, welcome to the stage.
Hi everyone, very excited to be here today. So, before I started, I know Amanda already did an amazing intro, but I just prepared the slides just in case. So, a quick nutshell. I think for me, my background is mostly about computer science, journalism, and also political science. So my past work experience is like in the both sections, like in journalism and tech. So for the journalism side, I worked at the Associated Press, Wall Street Journal, and NBC, and then I worked as a software engineer at Splunk, which is a Cisco company now. Cisco acquired it like about a year or two ago. So in today's talk, I want to work through like the 3 types of storytelling, each of which I have been fortunate to experience throughout my career. So I want to start with the first type, which I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with. What is bespoke storytelling? Can someone like in the audience throw me some keywords? Yes. So the first keyword is, oops, I don't think it's, how do I click? Oh, here. Yeah, the first word is custom. Any other keywords? Yes, exactly. It's time consumed or like handcrafted. I think the third keyword I put here is actually the low scalability. So to further illustrate this point, I want to show an example of like one of my very early work I did with Wall Street Journal. So it's back in 2018. So for this work, I manually reviewed like GE's printed like earnings report back from 1980s. So it's for 40 years of like SEC filings, like all turns into just this one graph. And as you can see, like the shapes of the color in the Sankey diagram was very highly customized and for this specific data set. And I ultimately chose like a vertical layout to show like all the 5 distinctive sections of like all the segment of the business. So then we have like in 2021, when GE split into the 3 public companies, the Sankey diagram was published again. This time, it's on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, and it was reimagined into a horizontal layout. So to further illustrate just how bespoke this chart is, I'd like to share to some of my early sketches about this design process. Definitely full of trials of errors. So this is like a very early version of I'm just looking at those SEC filings, trying to make sense of the data. What's going on, what are all the different sectors, and what exactly is happening with this data set. Then, the next version, you will see like a more refined version where it's like created in Illustrator. We kind of see like all the different segment was formatted like in a very more like hi-fi layout. But as you can see, this is still very different from what we saw in the final version. And then we have like this one I made in Illustrator, which kind of closely resemble to the final design. But this chart was, when I made this like draft, this was made manually. Like I calculate all the width based on the data SEC filing like next to me, one by one. So that shows like how manual, how much effort it is. And it took me weeks to go through that like 40 years of SEC filings altogether. And this is like a video kind of, I want to, so about like the digital version, so you guys can see what it actually looks like on the website. We have like the hover to show all the data, and this was joined, of course, like with the D3 and all those stuff, like with the data set, not manual, but we have to collect all those data manually and go through like all the journalistic work. And then the next example I want to show is another work which is also very bespoke. It's in the Texas Tribune, where I worked with Rose Ramsey, who was the co-founder and also executive editor of the Tribune at that time. So we used the voting data to explore whether the 2018 election was marked as a new trend towards a more like generally more competitive election, or just one-time swing away from the quarter-century pattern of Republican dominance. Here's also like where you can see this is like an early sketch of this project. Oops. Where's my? So here's like this. So for this story, it's very like, it's like scholarly, and we center this team, the whole story on this index, heat index, which we use to evaluate how competitive the race is. It's about the percentage like difference. So we build like the story arch by we having like a Texas map. We go to the district, and then we put like what do we mean by like all the definition of like hot, warm, cold, or cool, like all the different types of like competitiveness, and then we highlight the competitiveness of like district, and then we show particular examples of this district, which has been very swing like different. And then we move to Texas Senate. We do the same story arc just to make sure like when we show like a very novel, like bespoke design, people understand what does, if we just throw this table to people directly, they would be very lost what exactly it means. And then we do the same patterns for, just repeat for like House, Senate. And then in the end, we show like a input where user can like enter their own address, like so they can see what exactly is their own district, like how competitive their race has become. So we saw the House, and then we go to the Senate, and then they can see the congressional. And then for this particular piece, I was very proud, is because our well-respected closing keynote speaker, Alberto, actually wrote about it after the publishing. So this is like a screenshot from his blog post, and he said it's very cool, and he wants to see something similar to be done in Florida. So it's definitely one of the highlights for my early career. So some highlights about bespoke is like, It's very customized, it's very handcrafted, and it's like has very high editorial voice, but it has very low scalability. And we have to manually create the process. So the second type I want to talk about is actually templated storytelling. So the template storytelling is reusable. I define it as a very reusable with a domain, and it has predefined templates, and it has medium scalability. To illustrate this point, I want to talk about AP. So AP selection work is like, we have to cover like every race in last year. It's from Iowa caucus in January to the general election in November. And the election maps and table, all you can see here, has to be reused in all elections. And we have to do this like every 2 years. So it doesn't make sense to do the same effort as we saw earlier to go through like that many labor process for each charts. So here's more clear example. As you can see, this is a California page, and this is Florida page. They look basically the same besides the data. So it's like all those were created by template, and we have like parameters, variables we created for all of those so we can easily reproduce it. And then some other example was like reusability is like we can see AP selection visualization on our client's website. So this is like on the PBS, and then we have this from the Seattle Times. And they're basically the same like chart, besides like we allow users to customize for their own color and font. And then the same example here is like this thing was on the Atlantic Journal Constitution, and then we also have the same very similar layout on the Yahoo News. So this is what I called like the second type of our other viz is like the templated viz. The templated storytelling, it's reusable within a domain, and it has predefined templates, and it has moderate editorial voice, but it has medium scalability, and it's semi-automatic, but we have to do a lot of republishing every time. And then I want to move to the last one I'm gonna talk about, which is systematic storytelling. This is like very low, it's like reusable and standardized building blocks. It has like, some of this example you guys probably have seen or used in the past. It has like be on top of particular framework. So Nevo is like a React framework. And for those type of like visual library, it has like role component. It doesn't have, it's just a viz. You can grab the chart and then you can do whatever you want using whatever context you want. It doesn't have any pre-made theme. And then this is like kind of like what a component show like, which I have a hard time to find my mouse. Okay, here. And it's like a component, basically it's just like a chart by itself, and then you can dump whatever data you want, and then user can easily customize the chart to use for whatever framework they want. So to summarize like my point, this is like the third type. So we have like very systematic and it's reusable across domain, and then it's very component based. And it has like very low to moderate, I would say, editorial voice. And it has very high scalability. You could use it for any kind. It can be used for financial data today, and then we can use it for election tomorrow. And then, I want to end my talk on what's future. Because there's some questions for thoughts. Maybe we can talk more about it during, if anyone's interested, we can talk more about it during the Q&A. But where should we invest in the future? Is that more about like bespoke innovation or template refinement, or it's more on the systematic skills? And then how can we make the templated visual feel like fresh and relevant every time? And last but not least, how might Gen AI change the way we approach each type of storytelling? Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. All right, our third speaker doing our lightning talks before we get into our panel conversation, and I'm sure there are plenty of questions brewing, is Mark Palmer, presenting RIP BI, the impact of AI on data storytelling. Our demise is near, team. Our demise is near. Here's a bit about our speaker. Mark Palmer is an accomplished figure in the enterprise software and data analytics landscape, currently serving as an enterprise software product advisor for Warburg Pincus and hosting executive programs for Dataiku. With over 2 decades of experience, he has notably steered the product direction and engineering of 22 category-leading data and analytics products, including Spotfire and Streambase. He has developed patents in AI model operationalization and streaming data science. His expertise is further recognized through advisory roles on several boards, such as Tableau's Data Leadership Collaborative and the Data Visualization Society's Advisory Council. Palmer's impactful contributions have earned him prestigious accolades, including being named a tech pioneer who will change your life by Time Magazine and a technology innovator by the World Economic Forum in 2009 as the CEO of Streambase. Please give Mark a warm welcome. You want to walk or do you want to stand?
Walk and click. Okay, thank you very much. All right, I changed the name of my title from RIPBI to Riding the AI Bicycle of the Mind. No, it's the same talk. So before I get started, I just want to get a real read on the room and ask you the question. My wife and I love HGTV, love it or list it, so I'm going to ask you, where do you stand on the spectrum of AI? Do you love it? Do you wake up every morning and want to try a new tool, get it into your workflow, or do you loathe it? So quick raise of hands, how many people really use AI aggressively every day? All right, about 10%, interesting. How about who loathes AI, who really hates it? Wow, all right, here we go. No, it's good. Actually, we map to the Pew Research on this, 10% of people really sit in the loving camp and about 52% sit in the loathing camp. So my presentation here is to try to nudge the loathers to loving and maybe share some new things to the people that already love AI. But I want to start with the context. I've always loved the Steve Jobs inspiration that he had back in Apple computers. How many people have know this metaphor and know where it comes from? Oh my gosh. I thought I was going to put this up there and everybody's going to know this. Okay. So Jobs, when he was young and he was starting Apple, he read this magazine article in Scientific American from 1973, and it compared the locomotive capabilities of all animals. And it turns out that human beings are about average in terms of the power we extend to get ourselves from one place to the other. The condor is the most efficient animal in the universe in terms of locomotion. It's very, very, very efficient. But what this article parenthetically pointed out that Jobs leapt on was that when you give a human being a bike, we're way more efficient than even the condor. Now he extended that, and this was his passion in building computers, because he believed that computers could be that bicycle for us to make us be able to do bigger and better things and make an impact. So that's where he's often talked about technology being a bicycle for the mind. And I believe the same holds true for AI. So I'm going to go through 3 practical steps about the way I use it. I teach AI now. I'm going to talk about it from a user's point of view as opposed to the creator of products. And I'm going to use this example of a presentation I was creating for a board meeting as I was flying through LaGuardia Airport, and I was using AI to help me with this out. So the first idea is to think about prompting as a new kind of craft. This is the prompt that I put into AI when I was doing this research, and I was taking an idea of a patent that I had been working with a CTO on, putting it into AI, doing some research, and you can see the prompt. This is all one prompt that I gave the new reasoning models. And if you haven't checked out the latest in just the last 2 months, it's unbelievable what they can take as prompts. That's page 1, that's page 2. So I told it to do deep research on multiple patents, compare my idea to the ones that are in existing public domain. Then I also told it to start to make a simple way of presenting it to the board, and a different way of presenting it to the CTO and the technical team, and on and on and on it went. So that's the first idea, and I think it very much leans on an idea that Einstein talked about, which is the formulation of the question is often more important than the answer itself. I think the speakers this morning were all talking about how do we change our way of what are we doing? The shapers and makers presentation. Awesome, same idea. Okay, so that's number one. Change the way you think about prompting. It's a craft. The next one, hallucinations get a really bad rap, right? I love hallucinations, and now there are places and times when hallucinations are really bad. But if you think about it a little bit differently, and most people do this, unfortunately, with AI, is 80% of the content created with AI is used without modification. This is a really, really, really bad thing. Not only is it a bad thing for the obvious reasons, but it's a bad thing because you're missing the whole great point of AI, right? It's like ordering an ice cream sundae and not having the ice cream. Well, for some people. So the way I think about AI is this dot superconnector, right? Where like a pointless painting, like here's a little picture of a dog with little tiny dots, right? Connecting those points is what the artist does, and of course, you can create great master paintings like this one by Seurat. So the prompt that I gave AI came up with these unbelievable ideas, including one that I really liked called quantum intent superpositioning. Now, what is that? That's exactly what I said to AI. Where is the source for this idea of quantum intent superpositioning? So it went away, and it came back with the answer. It doesn't appear that this idea exists in any research, but I found two things. I inferred it. I synthesized it. By the way, this is AI calls its hallucinations synthesis. It gave me the two patents. I went and read them, a whole bunch of other papers. And I really, really liked this idea, and it was very related to what I was doing the research on. So this idea of hallucinations being very powerful is, I think, a powerful way of looking at AI. And then finally, taste is the new intelligence. This comes from Rick Rubin, actually. Do people know who Rick Rubin is? Yes. One of the great producers of music in our lifetimes, I would say. The Beastie Boys, Adele, Tom Petty. He did the Johnny Cash comeback albums that he produced. And he is becoming an AI vibe coder, interestingly enough. Rick Rubin is very interested in this. He did a great special with Paul McCartney where it was just him in a room and a mixer, and he was turning down the sections of the Beatles songs, which we've heard a million times before, and saying, where did this come from? Where did that come from? And it was this great juxtaposition of the shaper and the maker together in the room, to borrow a phrase I learned this morning. But he came up with this idea that in the context of using AI, which he's doing heavily now, taste is what it doesn't have. It can't choose among those 20 ideas that AI produced, like I did, and came up with one interesting, potentially patentable idea. So I'd encourage you to think about it that way. So I want to give an example of this. So I took this idea, quantum intent superpositioning, I put it back into AI, and I asked it to suggest 10 ideas to visually explain this idea to you, right? It came back with a whole bunch of them. I liked one. It's a concept from physics about a photon, an electron exploding. I took that and asked AI to create a video that shows this. This is the script it came up with, 1,373 words. It's a video prompt with 7 scenes. I took that, put it into AI, and this is what I got. So this is actually faithful to quantum physics, which I don't understand. I barely got through it in college. But it takes this light and it pushes it through these slots, and this is meant to visualize the idea of superpositioning, an idea existing in multiple forms at the same time. And then on the back plane, it takes those dots and it makes an inference and shows these 3 beautiful lines in the back. And this is the way I think about using AI, right? This is what it's doing for me as I'm thinking through these ideas. It's blowing up my prompt, coming up with all these little ideas, and then giving me interesting things to explore. Now, just to show off a little bit more, this morning when I was watching that awesome, where's the Northern Lights, guys? Okay, I took a transcription of your talk, I fed it into AI, and said, give me a video of the main spirit of this presentation. Before you sat down, I don't know if you're gonna like it, but anyway, this is what I got. The numbers coming through the northern lights. There's a bunch of stuff, energy deposed. I don't know if that's true, that might be a hallucination, but it's pretty cool. All right, now, one last thing and then I'll wrap up. Anybody see this ad? Anybody know what this is? Okay. 100% AI generated, very controversial. Holidays are coming by a firm called Secret Level. There's a great podcast by the CEO of this company, Jason Zada. It's won awards. It's on the Future of Storytelling podcast. It's awesome. And he talked about the impact of AI on the production business. He said, you know, we charge the same amount as we always did. We have just as many employees. We employ fewer grips and gaffers, to Gabrielle's point, right, this morning about changing, those jobs are changing. But the thing that's the most important thing is that we can dream bigger with AI. We can do things that we can't do in the physical world. So I took a little part of this video. I'm gonna replay it here, I think. I'm gonna try. Grips and gaffers probably could not get these scenes to happen, especially the dog and the cat and the mice all together in the same, you know, before the fire. So, okay. So I hope in 10 minutes here I've maybe nudged the loathers to loving AI a little bit more. And if you love AI, the idea that looking at AI differently, treating prompting as a craft, devouring those hallucinations, and then most importantly, realizing that the presentations here have been unbelievable. And what strikes me is that it's really all about the taste and the experience and not the knowledge necessarily, but your opinion that you share through your work. So the last one is thinking, and the taste is the new intelligence, I think, in the AI era. So thank you very much.
Our brave panelists to the stage. Thank you, Mark, for that great talk and for, I think, a thought-provoking one that's certainly prompting some questions for me. I'd like to welcome all of our panelists to the stage to go ahead and have a seat, and we'll have a short discussion about the future of data visualization. I think we probably could spend the better part of a whole day of this conference on that future. But I think what excited me was that it feels like there's some convergence around this idea that our roles are changing, and while the titles may have been dire, our expertise is not obsolete. We are still an important and valuable part of knowledge translation, making sense of information and what that looks like. Gabrielle, I'd love to start with you in terms of asking a question from your presentation and from a practical experience. You talked about this kind of evolution over into being a strategic advisor. Has that reshaped how you pitch yourself to clients, and what does that look like in practice?
I love this question. I think part of what Gabrielle was saying, which is like, we used to pitch the product. We used to be like, we will do a beautiful report. We will do an incredible story about your problem. And I think today, the way we present the studio, we have those really interesting sales calls where I say, it's all about finding out the value. And the value is no longer the product. The value is the process. And so we tell our clients when they reach out, it's not just about the story. It's about how we're going to help you think about who your audience is and your narrative is, and where do we get to the actual outcomes. And so we've changed the sales process. I mean, that first interaction with as like, we treat it as a strategy phase. Like, the person who runs this phase is a strategist. It is not a salesperson. We sit down with them and we're like, what are we really trying to achieve? Especially when social change, we try to be like, is this a vanity project? Are we doing this campaign just because it looks good to you? And you're gonna be like, we changed some things. So now we apply it more at the context of like, what is the actual audience? We're trying to like influence or do something with. So that has changed a lot.
Well, and that to me is a language shift, right? So it's shifting over kind of how we're pitching, the words we're using to describe what we do. And Gabriele, you also talked about this kind of language shift that you've used, and you used both the phrase data experiences at one point and then all the way into data native. And I know Shirley Wu had talked about this kind of shift to data experiences as a way of being more inclusive in how we define data visualization, and data native feels like it takes it one more level. So I wonder if you might talk about how your kind of client engagement and how the broader world has responded to that, because it makes sense to me, but does it make sense to other people is my question.
Yeah, I think like in a business context where like now execution is becoming easier in a way, finding a way to describe the expertise that we have, that it's not just the finalizing the product, like making a data visualization, but like understanding everything that goes into working with data and producing an outcome is, I think, the key. Like when we say that when we sell ourselves as like data natives consulting, that's what we're trying to convey. We're trying to convey the fact that yes, you might have found a way to make data visualizations faster, and it might not be worth it anymore to hire someone externally because the volume has increased. You're publishing, like 10 years ago you were publishing 1 report a year, now you're publishing 100 reports, and you have a team, and then you have Power BI. It's clear that you don't need execution anymore, but even more you need a way to orient your organization to bind everything together and to understand why you're doing this and what are the strategies behind putting out so much information and building so many outputs. And you need someone who has lived through it and that has learned how to build the output, but then has been able to move upstream and work with you, as Gabby was saying, like on a more strategic level. And what we're trying to convey with this is the fact that by being exposed as professionals to all the steps that go into creating a data visualization professionally, carefully, scientifically, like, correctly, we have the qualities, or like you should be looking for people that have these qualities that are able to understand complex systems of information.
Well, and Shelley, I mean, Gabby and Gabrielle both work at studios where they're pitching and getting client work. And the reality is, I know some of you are doing that kind of freelance work, but others are more where you are, where we're working within an organization and on a team. And so I'm curious how some of these ideas and concepts of being a strategic advisor or thinking and reframing our work, are those things that are coming up inside of your work at Visa, or are you seeing a different kind of change and shift in how internal teams operate when they're doing data visualization?
I think it's like I can't say too much specifically about Visa without going through legal, so I would just legal.
Broadly speaking, not at Visa, but broadly in the world of corporate visualization design.
So, but I feel like the tendency I notice is like, especially in the tech company, right? Like I work at Splunk before and other places. When we have like a software engineering team, which we make more about like the component, a lot of like this team, what we strive to do is more about like making sure all the product we have visualization look consistent. Mm-hmm. So it's like we don't want like product A has like this like have this head color, and then the product B has different color. So I feel like internally we have like, it's very important for us to make sure everything like looks like consistent for the brand and everything. And then when they come to more creative work, like sometimes it was handed over actually to the studios work, like they want to do like some installation, like very beautiful for example, this like product launch, or they want to do other work. So it's like they want the expertise to do like the very bespoke and expert type work, and then they want the internal team like focus more on like how we can scale and how we can make sure all the products run smoothly and efficiently.
It's interesting to hear you mention scaling and adding more capabilities in data viz and paying more money for those capabilities than not just relying on internal teams, which I think speaks to the complementary nature of the kind of work we do. Before I let Mark answer a probing question, I want to ask the audience, anyone who loathed AI at the beginning of his talk in 10 minutes, has Mark moved you towards loving AI? Raise your hand if anyone shifted their mind a bit. Well, Mark, we've got some work to do. So I think you made a really great case around the ways in which we can use AI as a thought partner. And you demonstrated and showcased various different things that you specifically have done in a really short 10-minute talk. My mind immediately goes to a lot of the big questions about some of the sustainability and environmental impacts and ethical questions around how we use AI. And I know you're someone who thinks a lot about kind of big picture humanist approaches to technology. How do you balance that challenge of what that looks like as we drain water from various countries to fuel our AI enthusiasm?
Oh, wow. Okay, so there's two ends of that question. So let me get to the draining water and the power question second, because I have to think about it.
Okay.
Because the human side of it, though, I'm going to actually slightly disagree with something you're saying, right? I don't think execution gets easier necessarily. It just changes, right? I think the secret level example of that is that it's the same number of people in that firm, and there's a lot of the prompting. All right, I did the party trick with the talk for the Northern Light guys, easy. But come on, it's hard to prompt these tools. It is a craft. That's why I talked about prompting as a craft. So I think it's just a different kind of job that is needed. Absolutely, it helps you be more strategic, more quickly, come up with patent ideas very quickly, as I was showing. So I'll say for the ethics side from people and work, I think it only, and Mike and I were talking about this, he didn't raise his hand, I didn't sway him at all, but he was absolutely right about it being, there's a term for it, AI sludge, stuff that people put a simple prompt in and they get some stuff back and they throw it out on the internet. If you look at AI that way, absolutely, there's all those things about bias and ethics. But if you look at it as a generative tool, that's why it's called generative AI. If you look at it as generating ideas and seeds that you can then take and turn into something that you could never do before. That's why the secret level example, I love that so much, right? You might not like it, but it brought a vision. Right now, Secret Level's working on a project for Wu-Tang that they've been thinking about for 30 years, but they couldn't produce it visually until now, right, with AI. So if you think of it that way, I think the ethics question get reframed. As for the power consumption, man, I'll just defer that on. I know we're short on time. It's a long topic, but all I would say is that it's not just the trite saying that. I mean, there is a sovereign war going on right now for control over AI, right? Countries, many countries are trying to become sort of the main provider. They want to have control over their own AI, and that includes, so it's looking like a national resource to countries. China with their work, Mistral in Europe for the Europeans here, and of course OpenAI and a whole host of companies doing it here in the United States. So it is, it's it's going that way. It's unbelievable what's happening with the power consumption associated with AI. All I can say is there's really no way of holding it back at this point. It's becoming, because it's becoming so strategic, and I'll just leave with this one last point. Most people look at AI and think of it as, it's helping my kid write an essay to get into college. Isn't it terrible? I mean, yeah, okay, so there's all those things. However, right now, it is now, if you look at what's happening, how people are actually using it, it's using to make critical strategic decisions in the government for that are affecting homeland security all over the world. It's being used to answer healthcare questions more and more and more and more. And of course, there's gigantic issues about that, but it's happening. There's no holding it back. The horse is out of the barn. So the real question is, and why I put my talk the way I did, was because I think it's just a question of looking at it differently and starting to use it differently.
You've got the horse out of the barn, and my brain goes to John Mulaney, and there's a horse in the hospital, and we don't know what it's going to do. And if you haven't seen that sketch, you absolutely should watch it. It's really funny. As we think about what that looks like, though, so I mean, the world is changing, AI is evolving, people are using it more and more. We see it in our State of the Industry survey that data visualization practitioners are increasing in their use of AI in different ways. And so I think the nature of how we do our work is shifting and changing. I think that at the same time, we've seen this shift away from the product is the product, the charts of the product, and how we impact outcomes and communicate that is important. But while we all may have good, I mean, well-intentioned, I think, approaches to how we use data viz. I mean, Gabby does a lot of great work with social good organizations. You do, I'm sure, great work making sure Visa makes more money, Shelley. But as we go ahead and think about the ways in which we go ahead and see data visualization get used, there are people who are going to use these tools for nefarious purposes. We know that that will happen. We know that is happening. And I want to actually open it up to whoever would like to speak to this piece, because I think it's an important one of how is it that we can play a role as data viz practitioners in a space where charts and graphs and data is often used for nefarious purposes and with malice, or accidentally misleading people just because it's so easy, to your point on the ease of making new charts, to make charts and graphs. Is anyone keen to take a first stab at that one?
Sure. I think this whole audience, if you think about it, just very, very simple analogous terms of master chefs, chefs in a, making the best restaurant. Everybody uses the same ingredients, right? But the master chefs know how they interplay, how they work together. That's what you got. That's what you all do, right? That's what everybody here does. You know how it works. So even though AI can do things faster, only you can really interpret and make sure it's used effectively, ethically, without bias, right? So that 80% number of people just using stuff straight out of the box is scary. But the only people that can really figure out how to do it right are you. Not my group. My group's the AI group. We're like building the tools. We're doing we're making mistakes. You have to correct us.
And you're bringing great data viz people into those conversations, I hope, Mark.
All the time.
Good. Gabby, did you have thoughts?
Okay, I'll do some weird nerdy things. In behavior science fields, we talk about theory of change, and we often think of, when we think about we're trying to do some kind of social change and help people believe in something or trust in something or do some kind of action, often we think about general audience, right? We see that a lot. But the way behavior science applies, we actually think of different groups. You think of the people that are your allies, people like us that maybe have like ethical practice and wants to do good. Then there's the fence sitters. That's the people that sit in like 50-50, not sure where to go. And then you have the people that are just resistors. And the way you nudge people towards good social change is that you actually ignore the resistors, because there is no way you can influence them. They are too far outside of your reach. And so the way we do it is we map influence, kind of like the way I did in the presentation, but you map influence on like who are your allies. So I think the way I think of it is if we have any role to have is that we are ally, and so we need to reach out to the fence sitters. That might be Mark, who is like building the product. That might be other people who do work with AI. I think if we completely ignore it, it will happen without us. So the question is like, how can we get involved in the process?
It's a great example of that. The secret level folks, that agency, they meet with Sam Altman all the time, right? So that's an example of bridging that gap because we're nerds. We don't know what it means to be creative, right?
We don't know what it means to be creative?
No, I'm talking about the tech people, right? Literally, they don't know. Like that's why they meet with these kind of folks, because they want to know how to make the tools more useful.
Yeah.
I have maybe a hopeful point of view on like the oversaturation caused by AI. If you think about it, like doing a parallel with news, like we come from a world where like you had only a few centralized sources of news that like most of them had like a process to sort of like validate the content. So we were trusting the news because there was some level of scrutiny, at least in big mainstream organization. Then stuff like Facebook comes up. Anyone can post, and from the outside, if you're not in the industry, it looks like something you would see on TV, and so fake news starts spreading because we're not familiar with the media, with the rules of the media, who makes it, and so it looks official, so it's probably official, it seems real. Now I think we're in a third wave where like people are starting to realize that the world is flooding with AI sludge, and we will experience it with stuff that clearly is fake. So maybe we will start doubting more, and maybe with more literacy and fluency, we will start demanding from like recognized, truthful sources. And so the fact that we're flooded with content, we will stop paying attention to the volume, and we will go look for quality content that can be trusted, or that at least it's aligned with our values, that does good in a way. I don't know if it will happen, but
I would love to see it. Shelley, anything to add?
Yeah, I feel like through like the 3 different types of Viz I was talking about, I feel like AI plays a different role, like in different ways. Because for bespoke like Viz, AI was more used like in generating ideas, like the brainstorming and etc. Like it's more like give you some idea, it's a great place to bounce ideas. But when you're talking about the template or like the systematic like storytelling or the charts, it's more about the code, right? It's like the code is like, in a way, it has a right answer. And there's a efficient way or clean way to write the code. And then AI is more like help you discover that or save your energy to more quickly to scale like your Viz library. So in that sense, I feel like it's not that scary because it's actually very helpful. And it makes like engineers more productive. And it's not like replacing human in the loop, because sometimes it's like the code quality is bad. But it's like, it's not like it helps people to do less repetitive work so that the Viz can be more consistent and used as like a larger scale.
Well, and I think that those words of using AI as an enabler, as a co-pilot, as a partner, a thought partner, I mean, that keeps coming up a lot. And to do some of the sludge busting for us in terms of some of the things that might be repetitive, repeatable tasks. I know that we would love to keep chatting, but I do want to close with one question to each of you that I did give you a moment to think about last night, if you read your email. But I'd love to know what 3 words would you use to describe the future of data visualization? Gabby, you are pulling out a list. I see. Let's let you go
But
first.
already last night, and I even emailed you back at midnight. So got this one. Okay, I put 3 words. I put strategic. I think it's an obvious one because of my talk, so I won't repeat that. I think one of the ones that I've discovered is relational. I think for a long time I've been living really siloed, like my data viz skill was siloed, and now I think it's about meeting people where they are and like working with them, whether it's tech people, AI people, developers, editors. Like I think we need to be a bit more open to the world and like, you know, merge our skill set. And then the last one is interpretive, because I think we're really good with ambiguity. And I think we're gonna live in a world where there is that ambiguity around like, do we use AI? Do we not? How do we use it? And I think we need to be okay with being flexible and adapt as we go.
Great.
I got your email, I read it, I answered it, I forgot my answer. But
New answer
I'm gonna
then.
change it anyway, based on this conversation. First of all, I would say misunderstood. I think it's the 80% number, and even some of the comments, I think when you dig in deep, it's very, I mean, your point, I thought where you're going with the behavioral science point about establishing trust is one of the best ways to trust it is to use it really aggressively. And I find that most people don't. The other is incredibly scalable. I mean, the idea, you started to talk about like coding, right? One of the fastest growing sectors in AI right now is code gen, vibe coding. It's called vibe coding, right? Even Rick Rubin's doing it. He is not a computer scientist at all. He's doing these podcasts. I'm like, it's like listening to my 20-year-old son with a history degree talk about coding, but it's great. He's doing it. And the point is that I had a little thing and I didn't explain it, that research, that ideation that I did on the patent, I did it 480 times faster by my rough math. It literally took 3 hours. It would have taken me 3 months to even find that site if I could have found it. So that's the second one. And then the one word that I do remember is taste. The thing that AI cannot do at all is taste. Right, and that's what you all add to it. That's what the human adds to it. So those are my 3 words. I only remembered one.
That's good. Shelley?
Yeah, so I think I agree with what Mark says. Like one of the word in my list would definitely be scalability, because I feel like this whole AI and even like the component of like this component in general, like in the commercial or the corporate world, it's just gonna scale faster in the future and maybe more consistent, and maybe eventually it's like you can even have a prompt and then you have like a charts ready and it's like meet all your standards and like the scale guidelines. And then the second word I think is actually collaborative, because it's like a different collaborative process. I feel like when I started the field, it's like the collaboration with designer, with the developer, and with the editor to generate like the stories and the news story. I feel in the future the collaboration also happen with AI, right? So it's like it's bouncing off like ideas with AI and see like another capability you have. Also, I was a little bit concerned about the intellectual property aspect of that, but I will leave this out. So it's like it will be like collaborated. And then I think the third part is like from more engineering perspective, I feel like it has some challenges with data viz, because inspired by the Carlos talk yesterday, right? How I was very curious, like how going forward the AI will decipher this information. Is that like given like a black image as Carlos gave, like is that like the most efficient way, or in the future we should like, you know, actually componentize, like, well, I give AI, see, this is my axis, this is my line, this is my chart, and then can you decipher information? Would that help like the LM and like to better understand what exactly going on? But I feel like there's a lot of exciting like research going forward.
Katya Forbes, who is on our board, has some great work right now on MX design, or machine experience design, where you're designing with the idea that the computer is reading what you write. And so it's fascinating to dive into. Gabriel, you had the first word, and now you get the last.
Okay. I would say intuitive, in the sense that, as I've been saying, it will become second nature to many people. It will become something you don't even think too much about, like a language people will use to express themselves beyond professional circuits. And this leads to the second word, which is invisible. I think we will make also fewer distinctions between data and data visualization. Because in a way, like we're starting to see, like even like think of a graph database. It's already visual in its structure. And I think what technology and like new mental models will lead to will make data visual in and of itself, in a way. So, and it will blend more into everything. And the third one for me is still human. Like when we started talking about, like Georgia and I and our team talking about data humanism, ultimately we were hoping for what is happening, so that like any people would start using data and inject humanity into it. And I think we will get to it, like as it becomes easier for people to work with it, we will stop seeing it through a technical lens. You have to learn to code in order to do this. And so, because if you go through a technical path, you technicize it, you dehumanize it. As it becomes more invisible and more intuitive, it can stay more human in a way, without being forced through like code in a way.
Well, and I love ending a conversation on the future of data visualization around all the humans and the humanity in the work that we do. So thank you so much to all of our panelists.